friends, and welcome to another episode of Just Another Kill Team podcast. In today's episode, I chat with Khoa about Void Dancer Troupe. We had actually recorded this episode before, but had some technical difficulties and ended up having to re-record it at the last minute. It is midnight on February 10. I would normally be releasing this in just a couple of minutes. Just going to chop it up and send it out here. Travis was unable to make it to the re-recording, so it's just me and Khoa today, but Travis will rejoin us again next week as usual, and also you will see him on the Stat Show for the Patreon and for the YouTube people as well. If you haven't already, be sure to leave us a 5-star review on Spotify. We appreciate your support. It helps people find us. Anyways, we love you. On to the show. Welcome, listeners. We've got Khoa here, who is a absolutely amazing Void Dancer player. We recorded an episode earlier in the week and had some technical difficulties, so we're just doing another real quick replacement. Maybe this will be a full-length episode, I don't know, but we're going to have something, and it's going to be sick. So thank you, Khoa, for coming on, and thank you for making time to record this episode twice. That's mighty epic of you.
You for having me, and yeah, I might be partially to blame for that, so sorry again. And I'm just happy to be back again. So yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah. So you've been doing Void Dancer Troupe a lot. Have you been dabbling in other teams, or is like Void Dancer like super duper your main thing?
Void Dancer is definitely my heart and soul. Recently I've done a palette cleanser after Las Vegas Open. Right now I'm playing with the Rekkas. They're super fun, very thematic, bunch of hot rolling dice with a ton of dice. Just big old orcs just punching holes through walls. So
just dial it up and smack them.
Yeah, so they're very fun. That's for sure.
And with they are very different. I've been doing a little palette cleanser as well, but my palette cleanser has been a little all over the place and a little closer to home because I played Angels of Death, and now I've been noodling around with Legionary quite a bit, and most recently I've been horsing around with Hyrotech Circle, which is fun.
Ooh, after the nerfs.
Yeah, I mean, I think Hyrotech Circle is super fun. The Technomancer is actually just like fully good. I'll say it.
Like his gun is crazy good. Like the 6 attacks alone and the buff you can do.
6 attacks piercing, yeah, and then you can make it severe and rending. So, like, one of the things I want to do is, like, okay, the Apprentech will cast 2 spells on a goon, give him the living metal, and then gas up his gun so he's severe and rending, and then he'll walk out with an engage order. This doesn't always work, but some teams that, will want to do that, they shoot at him, he survives, and then you magnify, or you command him to shoot with a juiced up gun, and then from your Cryptek, and then you juice up the Cryptek's gun, and then you have him shoot with a severe rending, and then you've just, like, shot twice with severe rending, piercing, insane guns.
And Ceaseless on top of that with the Magnify. Oh, so accurate. Very accurate.
It's gonna be nuts. Yeah, it's like you get, like, 2 out of 5 dice hit, and it's still just, like, 2 crits piercing for 10 damage.
I think that like, deletes anything. Just weight of dice alone.
Yeah, it's pretty gnarly. But Hyrotech Circle aside, maybe we'll chat more about that. But we're definitely here to learn some secret tech with Void Dancers especially. Have you, so you've been playing through all of, like, Kill Team 21, or when did you start?
Started even before Kill Team 21. I played the Kill Team 2018 team. So way back when they had, like, commanders and elites books by themselves with points. With the mishmash of weird 40k stuff. Yep. So Void Dancers has been creeping through all the way through there. So they still have Grey Knights and Tyranids, but GW doesn't love them for Kill Team. So
yeah, well, hopefully soon. When you played 2018, did you play Harlequins then too? Was that just like fusion pistol spam?
I don't think you could take multiple that time, but you could like roll, like before you could roll 2d6 to charge, and Void Dancer's thing was rolling 3d6 to charge. So they were just like,
could you charge more than 12 inches with that?
Yeah, I think you could charge for more than 12 inches. I have to look back, but I know their movement was just as insane. as is
Yeah,
today.
that's goofy and crazy. Yeah, so you've been playing Harlequins in Kill Team for a long, long time. So I'm guessing you probably picked them up right away when they dropped in White Dwarf.
Oh yeah, easily. Just being able to play Shadow Seer and Death Jester, because before in the compendium you'd only get players, so you lack the range and the extra weird utility that you get with the Shadow Seer now. Talking about the Shadow Seer now, with the nerf, I haven't played the Shadow Seer really as a ranged sniper that much. Usually, I like to move them up to use the it's called the stun grenade that they get, the hallucinogen grenade.
Yeah,
So I guess more players will discover how strong it is, just because it's also one of the few weapons with full seek. So you can
yeah.
really play around with just being safe and just chucking a 2-inch blast stun grenade, lethal 5 up.
Oh, it's a 2-inch
So
stun grenade.
yeah, so it really catches people off guard. Definitely in LVO, that has been like a pivotal role in multiple of my games where I just stun more than 3 units, and that just like shuts down an entire side because they'd either have to pay for APL increasing from their comms or just stuck in their drop zone because they can't move dash up to the point. So just crazy things like that. And it's
That is pretty gnarly.
and
So you do that like as like an alpha strike?
I like to keep my Shaoxier more safe. So I only use it in opportune times. But if when I see like let's say 3 operatives that can get hit, I think it's worth it to potentially trade the Shadow Seer in those times. It prevents one guy stopping 3 or 4 guys. It's very
Is
big.
it so it's not silent then, is it? I haven't even like looked at the profile for that.
It is silent.
Okay, so it is silent. So you could
You
like
could safely
throw
do
it
it.
down from like if you can get on a vantage and throw it down. Like I don't know if there's a lot of maps that can do that. But that seems yeah pretty gnarly. It's like if you can. I mean, me trying to be a crazy person and always looking for turn one violence, I would probably start with like very seriously looking for alpha strike capabilities with that. Because if you stun a bunch of people and they can't like hit you back, especially if you can also fog of dreams them, is that the one that delays them?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know how
The
much that would be useful because you need to spend an action to do that, don't you?
I do need to spend an action to do that. I think it's more threatening and into the dark, especially just because the small rooms. If you now with the Shadow Seer not being able to full range attack, you potentially repositioning a Shadow Seer up into a small room could easily hit the other side just because of 7-inch move. So it really stops people from wanting to like station up near a room and bunch up because they're just gonna stun all of them.
Yeah,
Very dangerous.
that is very
But
dangerous.
speaking of Fog of Dreams, I put in the command point Discord a lot of the tech I've been using.
Yeah,
Fog of Dreams is actually very useful in certain situations where you could either hit an operative, hit like a group activate 2 operative. So someone that activates with 2 operatives with GA2. I'm not sure. There's like a new ruling now. It's not GA2, but it's like a special rule. If you hit them, then you can rent like a double loot or like objectives that score immediately. And then on top of that, you could like I like to sometimes use this to pin down a target. So if you need to kill like a marine and they're active, you can like run over them, air mines, and then fog of dreams to chip them, and then maybe lay up with like a gunner to like finish them off or dash jester to shoot them. So then they don't have like a reaction to like move them up and then attack. That's like another thing you can use fog of dreams. But the one that I don't see happen a lot is if you fog of dreams like a weaker target, so like a Gribbly, someone that like is not a key piece to the or opponent, so maybe like a trooper or non-gunner piece. Because people usually like to set their gunners to be the last operative active,
yeah,
to be like the last threat. So if you prevent that, you kind of reduce their amount of activations efficiently. So you can force a gunner to go early, or you can hit a medic or comms, and then you can force them not to be active in the current turning point. So if you hit a comms with Fog of Dreams and maybe make them go last, then they can only ever APL increase a guy for the next turn. And if you do it in turning point 4, if they somehow live that long, and it's just a useless unit.
Yeah.
So big
Yeah,
things like that.
I love that. Like I noodled around a little bit with Phobos, taking 6 infiltrators. That's right. I even dropped the marksman, and it was kind of a similar
Ooh.
concept where if you wanted to draw out someone, you would just omni scramble some random goon so that the last active to like dictate their last activation. I like that a lot.
Another one that I recently seen, so this is not from me, but from the Discord that I saw, for those that not might know about it, it also stops being able to do actions. So if you Fog of Dreams a ready operative, they won't be able to do uh, what was one of them? The operative in Wormblade that can charge.
Oh yeah.
So if you Fog of Dreams him, he can't reactively charge because it's an action.
Yeah, and then that would apply to like the Corsair's bird guy and like the
Yeah.
Corsair's pistolier, and would that also mess up
Or any
people's
of the
guard?
like it wouldn't mess people up with guards because you have to target a ready operative, I believe, like a person that hasn't went yet.
That makes sense because that wouldn't really work if you targeted a not ready operative.
Yeah, so it's like powerful in that aspect. That is, I just recently learned about. So there's some fun interactions about them.
That is
They
pretty
have like an
gnarly.
interrupt, and then another one that I like to use for like weird tech is I like to bring like grenades almost all the matches because some people just assume that you're going to use the fusion pistol as the fusion pistol, and they're just going to measure out the 3-inch range of like the deleting button because it's just good, right? People forget that you could also just throw a crack grenade with the fusion pistol. Something you keep in the back of your mind where their threat range is actually 6 inches rather than just 3 inches. Something like I like to use as well. And only
Yeah,
recently, since LVO, with the Death Jester, like the Death Jester can actually fight. So it's not that crazy a profile, but for against hordes, 4 attacks on 3/4 rending, actually deal decent damage, and you can throw a crack after, so you can like charge fight, shoot with the Death Jester, not using the big gun. So that's a fun one, as well as darting salvo technically counters guard because when you move in between a shoot action, their guard would go off after you shoot them. So you get the shot off first. So if you go in using a fusion or a Nero pistol or even Death Jester, you get a shot off first and hopefully kill them before they kill you. So that's a big one.
yeah, especially if the Death Jester shot is like a torrent or something.
Oh yeah, that and actually if you guard with a player, if you happen to fight with them, you can actually use Kern Falls with the guard action because you're actively fighting because you're using the fight action. You can actually fall back after, which can catch people off guard. I think it's more niche, but let's say you guard and they go up, charge, and attempt to fight you. You can fight first, maybe hit them with a crit, and then fall back, and then just
Yeah, that's
immediately enter
huge.
action. That's a big one. Another one that I know Art has brought up, I think it's been on the podcast before, is dropping the DJ. I used to be against it, but now I've warmed up to it after dropping the DJ on novitiates. So I think it's actually beneficial, either in Into the Dark against hordes, or especially against novitiates now, since they have a buffed up ploy that wastes your action. You don't have an additional target, so it's just better to have that threat saturation with
Yeah,
another player rather than going 1-for-1 with just a Death Jester.
yeah, because the Death Jester is like completely incapable of like charging and shooting or like fall back and shoot or anything like
He,
that. So you get that flexibility back if you take a player instead.
yeah, that and if you ever end up using Epic, so how Void Dancers work is they can use like a performance, either giving them balanced in shooting or balanced in melee. Recently, I've warmed up using balanced in melee, either in mirror matches or matches where I think I need to get the extra hit in, or I have a worsened hit. I actually take ammo cache recently and just been putting it in the center point where I assume where I'm going to be fighting the most. And actually works out most of the time, which is kind of funny because it gives you essentially balance in shooting.
Yes, then you've got both. I was going to ask you about that. Do you like were you mostly taking the melodrama? Is that's the one that gives you balance in shooting?
Yeah, usually you'll see almost everyone taking balance in shooting just because it's just elves are all about like the charge fight shoot, especially with void dancers. So they need that. Usually the 5 attack 4/5 weapon on any of the profiles are reliable enough to kill, and then you need your shooting to reliably do more damage. So balance usually is the big one. That and the key pieces will be the gunners in most of the matchups. So the fusion gunner, hero gunner, having balance is super crucial. It's just when I usually take in the mirror match. I like to take balanced in epic in the mirror match, just because so with one of those times you need that extra hit to like murderous entrance them or something like that. I've actually, it's funny enough, in the mirror match, I've used caresses, which is the 5 attack, 3+, 4/5 rending in a mirror match. This happened in LVO where I rolled like 2 hits in a crit and then rending into 2 crits in a hit. And then to get around a Segarex Jest, I re-rolled my hit into a fail because of epic. So I could then murderous entrance 2 crits in. Because the murderous entrance keywording is you're not allowed to strike with the second crit unless you have a normal hit available. But if you only have crits, then you can strike with both crits. I was able to do.
So you must have been going. Oh yeah, because the jest could have messed up the second hit.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's like weird scenarios like that because jest only works on normals.
So with the weapons, do you ever like mix and match, or do you just like sweep the whole team takes the same weapons for the melee weapons?
I've actually mixed and matched recently. So for any teams that have like a parry first or like a duelist operative or an operative that turns off rerolls, I usually bring like a couple embraces, which is like the 4/5 brutal. Because brutal doesn't care about those special rules.
Yeah.
And then it makes it the parry first people harder to block the brutal weapons.
Yeah.
So these are matchups like I take it in Inquisition Exaction. I assume they're going to take Exaction against elves, which they usually do. So those shields really mess you up. So having the brutal keyword is very useful there. The brutal keyword is also useful with embraces against Blaze of Cain against the Banshees because they also have like a parry first ability.
Yeah.
And then what else do I use to take embraces as well? I also take a couple embraces against the Wormblade if they take the Locust. I think the charge parry first guy.
Yeah, I feel like it'd be good for higher tech circle too. I mean, you probably don't want to be charging all the time, but when you do, you don't want to get parried out. And that like accurate 2 plus zap thing, you're more likely to just like punch through with the brutal.
Yeah, before I don't think many people bring the Psychomancer. Before you definitely want to bring embraces against the Psychomancer just because you can stop. So they wouldn't parry out you, and you'd have like the embraces. Because with Wraithbone Talisman, you really just need 2 hits, and then you Wraithbone Talisman to like murderous entrance and then strike them, like kill a 10 wound model.
Yeah.
But now it might be that matchup's much easier. I haven't played with Kisses yet, which is the 5 attack 3/7 weapon. I've heard people use it against Ratlings just because their wound threshold is just like perfect. It's like I think 6 wounds or something, so
yeah,
that works with Kisses. I haven't had that matchup yet in my scene. And then what's the other ones? We were talking about caresses. I like using caresses against either 10 wound models. So that's the 5 attack, 3+, 4/5 rending. So that just gets the nice 5/5 hit. And that's perfect to 10 wounds. So I like that against commandos or Felgor. I've seen some people talk about taking it against Marines, which I could see being useful as well. I play more of like a KG shooting style against Marines, so I usually don't take caresses. I usually just lean into like the charge fight, turn falls back, and then shoot them. I do that with multiple like players with either like cracks, fusions, or Neros. So it never ended up being like a double strike and then final strike with a caress. But those are usually most of my weapon takes. I never take the specialist weapons on the leader or Shadow Seer. They're just too beneficial to have on the players.
Yeah, because
And then for
the
those
players get the
starting,
free ploys, and that's like the big reason that
yeah,
makes it good for having the special weapons on the
oh, yeah.
players.
With the Luck of the Laughing God, which I was surprised was not nerfed. I was thinking they would make it once per game, but I guess not. So we'll just run with that. The people who are starting out with Void Dancers, they're definitely an expensive team because you need at least like a box and then two characters, which is like already expensive. And then if you want the full roster, you need to like add two more boxes at least on top of that. So that's like over $200. But if you're just starting out, I'd say just build your elite player with power weapon. Then you're going to have the Shadow Seer and Death Jester stock. You don't want to give the gunners the gun to the Shadow Seer. So you're going to have regular players with blades because most of the time, unless they change the weapon profile, blades are just too useful because they have the 5 attack, 4/5 severe, which gives you an auto crit, which is just perfectly aligns with current falls, which you're always going to want to use.
Yep, Curtain Falls is like kind of a huge centerpiece of the power of the team. For anyone that's unfamiliar, it is a firefight ploy where immediately after striking with a crit, you end the combat sequence, discard all of the dice, and you can fall back or dash. Either way, you can't move more than 3 inches. It also allows you to fall back or dash if you normally would not be allowed to. So you could charge, crit someone for 6 damage, and then immediately just like peace out and shoot them if they're still
Oh, yeah.
alive.
It gives like the Void Dancers crazy mobility because on top of the charge after you kill them, like you mentioned, they get the extra 3 inches, which leans into their playstyle. So a lot of Void Dancers you'll see mostly take Plant Beacon. I also can see for the secondaries for TACOP, if we're going into that,
Yeah,
it gives them extra range to like then maybe go like dash and plant a beacon, which I end up doing in one of my matches. And usually you want to take plant beacons just because it's so hard to counter that attack up with any other faction. The only way you could really stop Void Dancers if you're a person listening and you want to beat Void Dancers is like either slowing their movement down or putting like a strong side to prevent them from pushing into your territory and planting their second beacon. You got to be conscientious of that, or you can really lean into that on critical missions that are heavy action based, which also hurts them a lot. But they could take confirmed kill as well, which is something that is also as good. But I've just been using a lot of Plant Beacon in general just because it's so hard to block and the movement alone is very easy to do with
yeah, and
Void
the three
Dancers.
APL, and like since you can't double shoot or double fight, like pretty often you're gonna find yourself with that extra APL. So like if you charge and fight and there's no other targets and you kill your target, then you might as well just like plant the beacon.
Yeah, there's like that, and then sometimes if you have like the equipment slots for it, it's also useful just to take stuns because you can hit people in cover without needing them to be a valid target. That's something useful as well if people have equipment pieces used over. Going into equipment for Void Dancers, I actually only use maybe two of the faction equipment almost always. I always like to take the Shuriken Toxin rounds just because it's great into wound thresholds, especially against 8 wounds or 10 wounds, and then higher just for the mortal wounds. And then the Wraithbone Talisman just auto take because it just lets your dice be more reliable if you just have multiple fails. And then I have tried Death Mask, which is after I think 4 players with the pivotal role, a die, you get a CP. I just don't think it's as useful because if you're losing that many models already and you're not in a great position to utilize extra CP, so I feel like that's a bit of a trap. And then the understudy mask, I think there's more valuable equipment rather than giving another player balanced, in my eyes.
Yeah.
Usually the equipment that I like a lot is the crack grenades, just because they're like another ranged weapon. Like I mentioned, they give your fusion an extra 3-inch range technically, and then can give your Death Jester technically a move dash shoot in a way, so another range increasing. There's some use in ITD, especially with Portable Barricade, because since they increase your save, you actually can utilize that in with your ploys. There's a ploy called Domino Field, which you can block multiple dice based on the roll they did. So if your save becomes a 3+, you can then block hits of 3s, I believe.
Yeah,
Haven't
that's a
used
wider
Portable
net for
Barricade.
the domino field. Yeah, the domino field is really good. I feel like we should shout that out just a little extra, just because it's so gnarly.
Yes.
The way it works, it's a firefight ploy. It's kind of like the Space Marine transhuman physiology, where it's reactive. So when someone attacks you, it's shooting only. You see your opponent's dice if they have a bunch of matches, and then you have a armor save that matches that. You can block all of the matching numbers. So, like you were just saying, if they roll a bunch of 4s and you roll a single 4, you can use one dice to block their entire roll.
Yeah, the domino. We'll go into the ploys part of Void Dancers. The domino field is probably one of the ones you'll save almost always against the shooting factions, especially against those factions that hit on 4s or even higher. Just because your saves are on 4s, and like Jason mentioned, if you get that golden number, so this has happened to me. Like a heavy bolter goes in, he's got lethal 5 up, he's hitting you with like 4 5s. If you just roll 1 5, which is a very interesting thing with Void Dancers, is sometimes you never want to take the retain in cover if you are in cover because of Domino Field.
More chances to roll the matching number.
Yeah. And that was what was happening. So I chose, instead of getting the retain, I'm just going to try to fish for a 5, which I did, and then blocked 4 5s. So normally it would kill most models with that, I think, piercing 1, the heavy bolter, the lethal 5 up, but with Void Dancers, they're deceptively tanky. Being able to just block it with the ploy itself. So always save a CP for that.
Yeah, and on that note, they have the strategy ploy. I forgot what it's called, but it's the one that gives you basically a balanced armor save if you have moved.
Yes. Yeah,
so
prismatic blur.
Yeah, prismatic blur, and then you're just like fishing for a match across 4 dice essentially.
Yeah, so that's another one that you're always going to use against shooting teams. There are times where I regrettably didn't play it. You're always going to want to have that in the tank against shooting teams, especially. It gets less useful as you get into the late game. So maybe like near 20.3 or 4, depending on the board state of how many shots you're going to see going to happen to your players. That, and I guess we can go in order with strategic ploys. You're rarely going to use the what's the one, Rising Crescendo. You're rarely going to use the charge dash because it's a ploy that seems very niche. It basically allows you to charge and then dash after, but not vice versa. So I could only ever see it being like a super cagey melee battle where you charge and then dash into cover, perhaps, or dash out of the way with confirmed kill and then get you like better positioning. But I've never used it myself. There's usually better players you'd use.
The main thing that so I can think of one thing that I would do with the Rising Crescendo, and that would be to root out someone that's being really cagey, like maybe against like Wormblade or something. If they have a big screen of operatives and you don't like, and you want to have multiple opportunities to be able to charge, and like the curtain falls, you could like charge 9 inches past the threat, hit them for 6, and then dash 3 and get within range of like one of the agents behind the screen of goons and shoot them. With Rising Crescendo active, you could use that to basically just ping pong off of goons and then get within shooting threat range of more important targets behind them. That's kind of like the main thing that jumps out to me. I think that would be really interesting. So that would just be for like an all-out crazy siege turn.
Yeah, full on throttle threat. If you can see you can do it multiple times, I think there's value. I just personally haven't, but I definitely can see it being utilized. The thing is, as well, is Curtain Falls kind of does that as well already. With it allows you to dash
do it for free.
as well.
And you probably only need it once anyways.
Yeah, so it's also a good bait in Into the Dark. So if people stage up with their operatives, maybe like a barricade that is a counter barricade to your one on the midpoint, if you charge them, you can actually do a dash right at the door, and then you can catch any true gunner sitting at the door, which is great.
With Curtain Falls,
yeah, with Curtain Falls,
that's the same. Oh yeah, so and that is enough just because usually Into the Dark only has one big room like that.
Yeah, so that allows you just easily get fully across. I was able to pull it off one time, but it's great when it hits. Unfortunately, it didn't roll too well, but it's a great to catch people off guard, like your true threat range with Curtain Falls.
Yeah, it's pretty huge. To the so fast.
Yeah. The other ones that you'll keep in your pocket is if it's a melee-oriented team, you're going to use Sagarak's Jest. I sometimes like to use it against shooting teams to reduce the amount of chip damage you'll take when they strike you back. If you're not using Murderous Entrance to double strike them to instantly kill the people. In the previous meta before Dataslate, you'd see a lot of elites. So I guess we'll see the rise of hordes maybe more often, besides Inquisition and maybe Blooded. I've seen a lot.
Yeah, and definitely there's going to be a lot of elves. Lots of elf meta, and like Sagarak's Jest, Sagarak, however you pronounce that, is definitely going to be good into other elves.
Oh yeah, no matter how well the team hits, the fact that it exists really throws people off, just as like it could happen. So your opponent has to assume that it might happen, which potentially might kill them on their own charge, especially against other elves. So it's like, yeah, it's a great tool to even instill mind games against your opponent, because I always use it against mirror match. I'm always going to use it against elves with melee operatives, or just like elves in general. And then the other one, is there another strategic ploy? We did Rising Crescendo.
I mean, we talked about darting salvo a little bit to break guard. That's like the fourth one, because Rising Crescendo, Prismatic Blur, the Just, and then the Rising Crescendo. So that I mean, when I first looked at that, I was like, I feel like I wouldn't really use that a lot, because a lot of your best shooting is short range. So if you're doing like danger close Rising Crescendo, I'm like, it doesn't seem like a lot of value there. But when you talked about using it to break guard, I'm like, okay, there's definitely a use there. Is there any other like reason that you would use it, or is it pretty much just for breaking guard?
Another useful one you could use it at is really leveraging your 1-inch climb. So against like melee hordes, especially. So let's say like Felgor, they hate like the taxing of movement. Like I know a lot of people say Felgor is going to be crushing it as the Marines like kind of fall a bit with the nerfs, but it's just going to be just as difficult, because on maps on open where the buildings are near the center, you can easily use the darting salvo move, and then you can shoot them, and then you can move further with the rest of your movement. And with 7-inch move, 1-inch climb, it's going to be really hard for them to get like that 8-inch charge off going over like multiple pieces of terrain.
Oh yeah, and you can also just like straight up pop tart on buildings, including with the Death Jester, because the Death Jester having heavy reposition only means you wouldn't be able to move and then shoot and then dash back. but with the rising crescendo, you could pop tart a building. That was the term for when you would move up to the building, shoot, and then dash to get back down behind it so that you're not visible to be shot again. People have been referring to that to pop tart as pop tarting for anyone that has not heard that before. So you could definitely do that there as well.
That or and I know the second floor of Vulcus has been nerfed a bit, but if it's in the midpoint, if you're attacking someone on like the mid objective, you could move in such a way where you can climb back up all the way over the top of the second floor, and it's really hard for anyone to really get you up there. Like, regardless of now they can charge you, they have to spend a ton of movement. I think it's like, I want to say like 4 inches over, and then you need like another climb. It's very hard for other teams just to try to get you, especially if they're melee horde. So
yeah,
they're definitely the huge points you'd use. That's most I can talk about for the strategic ploys. For the tactical ploys, the Murder's Entrance double strike we talked about a bit with the usage of Epic. So you're always going to use it, especially in breakpoints where you're going to have like 8 wound models that can't like damage reduce that well, and then ways to you not to take damage back is when you're going to use it, which essentially is after you strike, you can then immediately strike with another dice, but the second dice can't be a crit unless you only have crits left. So it's a lot of damage up front, and that can really take down Marines as well. So Void Dancers are really good at fighting Marines at that level, just because if they take any sort of damage, then they're in that perfect threshold to get hit.
Yeah, that is very strong. Yeah, like if you've chipped them with the sniper silent thing that just got nerfed to 8, and then knock them down to the range. Yeah, mirror mines, or if you hit them with some shooting attacks or whatever. If you've chipped them down to where Murder's Entrance can kill them, they're just like completely not safe, and that can be like 9 wounds, easy peasy. So it's just like doesn't take a whole lot to make them completely not safe.
I guess that's a big one as well with the darting salvo is if you don't think you can kill like that operative, it's good to chip them. So darting salvo allows you just like run up a bit, chip them, and then run further back. And then if they really want to get you, they gotta get to you or shoot you, I guess, and make them open. So that's a big one. We talked about a lot about current falls. You know, it's good. You're always going to have enough for current falls. You're going to use it as well for Murder's Entrance. You're going to have that CP. So you can always see that Void Dancers love their ploys. They're going to be pretty CP intensive. That's produced by the Luck of the Laughing God, which is very useful.
Yeah, that's the data card ability of the basic player, which is like the basic warrior. And that is each warrior can do what is it exactly? It's like you do a ploy for free, and then there's some limitation, but the limitation is like hardly anything.
Yeah, it's like once per battle, and you can't use the same ploy again. So you can use like the first turning point, you can use like a command reroll, and then the next turning point you can use like Murder's Entrance, and the third turning point you can use like Current Falls, but you couldn't use like Murder's Entrance, Current Falls, or command reroll in the fourth turning point.
Yeah, you could, but it wouldn't be free.
Yeah, it wouldn't be free. Yeah, it's essentially like 4 CP, which is a very strong ability.
Yeah, that's
you'll
very,
utilize
very strong.
A lot. The next ones that you'll use, we talked about Donald Field, how that's always going to be useful. So you'll have a CP for that, especially against shooting teams. And then the last one is more niche, but you're going to use it quite a bit against teams that have Seek Light, which is the elusive target ability, which essentially gives you super conceal or doesn't allow you to be a valid target regardless of what terrain type you're on. So this is great for staging up into the midpoint with, like, let's say your fusion to threaten other operatives. It's really great on Into the Dark for protection against those operatives that can like attack you and have Seek Light or even Seek. So then you can be safely on the point.
Yeah, so like a perfect example of this is let's say you are playing Void Dancers and you're playing against Angels of Death, and they put the Eliminator Sniper in a big room that you've got light barricades in. You just run up to a light barricade, pop elusive target, and now that seek light profile on the sniper is totally meaningless. That combined with the fact that you can vault over the barricade for 1 inch, you can probably clear the entire room and kill the sniper before he ever takes a shot.
Yeah, the threat range is immense. The big thing as well is the super conceal lasts until they activate again, which you can safely either make them the first or the last operative, and you can maybe pay it again if you need to, force them to come to you. And people don't like to come to elves, so
yeah, that's definitely that's solid. Yeah, I think that covers all the ploys, and we've talked about the equipment. We've talked about all the data cards. Does the lead player do anything special?
So the lead player allows you in the strategic phase to swap your performance. So you can turn your chosen one performance, either balanced in melee to balanced in shooting, or balanced to shooting to balanced in melee. It rarely comes up. I like to use it when I am going into melee sometimes.
Yeah, if you started as shooting and then you just like essentially it's similar to like switching your Space Marine doctrine, where just like as a strategic gambit, so then you'd switch from melodrama to epic, and then everybody pounces in and starts slamming people with their balanced melee.
Although you're not going to use that as much, I think the more important thing is I treat the leader as like a better player in a way. Just because the leader gets 9 wounds, it really throws off some damage thresholds for certain factions, because most factions will have 4 or 5, and they need a crit to either kill the leader on top of potentially having Segarex Jest up. And then the leader has access to the power weapon, which is a very dangerous weapon where you can reliably kill Marines with a murderous entrance. So your leader is one of the key pieces that can hold a room by themselves and reliably tank decent hits, just because the damage breakpoints are really solid. Like, for example, there was a time when I think it was against Jeshua, and his leader with the Demon Blade like charged up, and he was supposed to have lethal 5 up, and it felt like he did. I guess he didn't, because he just like rolled all normals. I rolled like multiple crits, and then essentially that just allowed me to kill him back, because Segarex just like popped off and he could not block a normal with a crit, but the parry became nothing, and he does 4/7. So he hit me twice, and I essentially hit him back for 18, which kills his leader on his own charge.
Wow.
So crazy things like that can happen because of his 9 wounds. So the leader is very strong. A lot of people should think about matching him to operatives that don't have a high base normal damage. The 4 damage is really great because you need 3 to kill him with. So that's a great piece to use as.
Yeah, that's huge. It's kind of a similar concept. Phobos, the leader has 13 wounds, and that's an amazing breakpoint. And like Phobos has, their equivalent of murderous entrance, and there's actually a lot in common with the 7-inch movement, the murderous entrance. There's a lot of nifty tie-overs there. My paint scheme on my Void Dancer Troupe and my Phobos Marines is the exact same paint scheme.
Oh, that's awesome. Nice. And the Phobos Marines are technically the elves of the Marines, so they got the nice 7-inch move and like tons of tricks.
Yep. Dodgy and killy and fast.
I think that matchup is it feels pretty even though it might be slightly into the Void Dancer's favor against Phobos, just because they have the 12 wounds, which is great with their murderous entrance, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's not as bad as like Corsairs are, especially a nightmare for Phobos, because they've got extra power swords and Blades of Cain. But Blades of Cain, I guess, are sort of rising in popularity. But for a while, I immediately knew that Phobos was going to have a nightmare time into Blades of Cain, but wasn't worried about it because everyone thought they were horrible. But yeah, power
And
swords
now
are a
I'm just on
nightmare. And then the idea that void dancers don't have power weapons is slightly comforting.
yeah, except for
I
the
mean, there's
leader.
just the one, yeah, and
For
then
the
they
leader.
do still have plenty of
Yeah.
like the fusion pistol's still pretty spooky. The leader's pretty spooky, but yeah, I think they kill each other really well, and like if anyone's non-reciprocal in staging threats, it is the void dancers. But like Omni Scramble
Yeah.
is huge, so that is a
Yes.
tough and scary matchup.
The other big thing for players looking to fight against Void Dancers is you really got to watch for their key pieces. If you take down their fusion or Nero pistol gunner, it's going to take a lot of teeth out. They also hate anything with. I guess we haven't talked about this is how to get around Domino Field, which is any ability that retains or has rending. So just as a refresher, Domino Field relies on what your opponent has rolled. So if you retain certain dice, the retained dice doesn't have a value, so Domino Field can't affect it. So anything like, for example, Rekka's Rekka ability to retain multiple failed as normals, Domino Field can't block that. If you're on like a vantage point and shooting down with accurate 1 or accurate 2, they can't block that either. Or if you're blooded and you have the retains, any retain ability like that really hurts them, as well as the rending
Yeah,
hurts
so
them as well.
if
You
you
can choose
choose
the dice
like
value.
yeah, so if you choose like a result of a 4, like let's say I shoot you and I had 2 4s and a 6, I would choose the 4 to become a crit, for example.
Hmm.
And now all of a
I think the
sudden,
small things like that.
but
Go
then I
ahead.
guess in that particular instance, if you domino fielded on a 4, would that block the 4 that I retained as a crit and the 4 that was a normal hit?
Yeah, I guess in that case you would want the 2 that you hit with as the crit. So you
Yeah.
want to do the low values, as they don't like any people that can hit better than their save, which is usually the 3+ teams, the 2+ teams with their snipers or flamers, some of them. That and any weapons that do mortals or even mines. Like usually void dancers have 0 sources of healing. So if you can chip them, that really throws them off with any sort of mortal wounds damage, seek damage is really useful.
Yeah, knocking even a wound off is pretty huge. So when it comes to the matchups that are scariest for void dancers, it sounds like Felgor are pretty scary. Are they the scariest, or is there someone else that's scarier?
Let's see. I think even though Warp Coven has been nerfed, they're just as scary because they still have a lot of tricks, and they still have like the. But dancers don't like the just a scratch abilities. So the just a scratch ability on the Marine, regular Marine, that all is
Yeah,
dust turns
all
to
is
normal.
dust.
Yeah, that and Arcane Robes turning crits into normals really throws off the math. So anything that is able to utilize damage reduction really hurts elves. They don't like that a lot. Like Plague Marines are difficult a bit as well, just because they have the ability to move up their sorcerer within 7 inches and then poison you. And again, we'd hate chip damage. They have the ability to like stun you if you're poisoned, or if you get within 3 inches, they can turn it off. They hit on threes. So strong things like that we don't like. And then I haven't played the Commando matchup, but I know in the past the Commando matchup has been a bit difficult just because they're just scratch
Yeah.
always throws off the math.
Plus, they like have a fair bit of like actually pretty good melee.
Yeah, their base melee, like any operatives that like the nice 4/5, like any 4 minimum damage really hurts the elves because we need to make sure to hit you in one And if you just get outer threshold, those like 10 wound plus operatives really is good at breaking that math there. But
Yeah.
other than that,
Have you played Felgor? Like, how bad is it?
I unfortunately don't have like a big Felgor player in our scene. I've yet to see that matchup fully. I can see it being very difficult because they technically tar pitch you once they frenzy. So you really play like a shooting style against Felgor.
And
I
like
recently found
the
out their shaman
severe
has a full
blades, I
seek
feel
weapon,
like would be pretty good. Yeah, they do have a full seek weapon on the shaman, which is huge.
which is kind of scary.
Yeah,
So although the shaman has to, they don't have that APL manipulation that the pre-nerf like Mindburn has with Warp Coven, where they can just like hide after. So it's just not as bad, but it's
yeah,
still just as good. So it can catch you off guard. If you stage up and you're not obscured, then they could potentially delete an elf because I think it's like 1/3 saturate rending.
yeah.
So if they pop off, it could really hurt you if you don't roll well, or like severely injure you, which renders an elf kind of useless. So
Yeah, and it doesn't take that much to pop off because anything rending is like surprisingly common that the rending
yeah,
triggers.
and I do think the Hannah Archon matchup can be difficult as well, just because they have a lot of sources of like poison and lethal 5-up and spot healing. So chipping is hard,
Yeah,
and
and
they
they've got
can
that extra body, and they can just like drown you in crits with from Darkness Death and Blade Artists and all that, so that they can have like lethal 5, and then like it's like a super form of severe where even if you roll a crit, they can upgrade another one. That's how From Darkness Death works.
yeah.
So
And I
they can
think
just
they're
like hit you with 3 crits in like every melee pretty reliably, which is not great
yeah
for the chest.
they definitely can reliably get around. Yeah, you're one of your strong defensive ploys, as well as I think they have like a full seek bird.
Yep, the
I
full
think
seek bird can just like nail you.
on twos, I think.
Yeah, and it's so yeah. So he's like the full seek bird is like 5 attacks on 4, saturate. It's like 1-2 or something like that. But then you can also mark you with the bird and then shoot you with his carbine that hits on 2s, which is pretty good. And then they've got the disciple of Yelindra that can just like sprint across the board and throw a poison stun grenade at you. And then that chip damage would be a nightmare for the elves. So they've got like a lot of things that can chip you and attrition you and like the crits that are hard to block. That actually might be like theoretically one of the harder matchups.
Yeah, they've been like notoriously very dangerous, especially now that before the matchup wasn't as bad because you had 6 objectives in the previous edition. So you could really put the pressure on Hand the Archon because one of their biggest weaknesses is action economy. They're 2 APL. But now with the change of the ability to give more guys 3 APL to the agent auto getting one if they take the strategic ploy one and they give one to a guy, then their agent will get one. So you have like multiple sources of 3 APL. That really helps them out. And the objectives being 3, they don't have to worry about multiple, so they need to spend as many actions
Yeah, they can kind of
to
focus you
do an
down.
objective. Yeah, so I think the matchup is more closer now than before, definitely. And I have fought a really good player. I believe it's Nestor, Hannah Archon player. He's very good,
Yeah.
and that matchup is pretty hard. Other than that, I think most of the matchups have been like relatively even before the nerfs to the Marines, just because Void Dancers in general were very good at fighting Marines. Just because that combo, if people aren't aware, the charge fight, turn falls for free and then shooting them usually does so much damage reliably, especially with balanced in shooting. Your fusion pistol more than likely will always get a kill. And then now with the nerf to piercing, your neuro pistol will likely get a good decent kill as well. 4-5
Yeah,
AP1 stun.
and like you've been saying, even like a crack grenade is huge, or like the rending shuriken pistols are like no joke also.
Yeah, especially when you give them dev wounds 1. But usually you run Shrieker Toxin rounds on the Death Jester just because of the weight of dice.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of good tricks. I mean, I'm kind of under the opinion, like my opinion about tier lists and stuff like that is we don't actually have a proper S tier because there's too many teams that have enough like tough matchups where like a proper S tier is someone that can just like roll everybody and it's like, you know, you can have a couple of teams that can match each other, but there's like no one is completely safe. I think Corsairs, in my opinion, are like maybe the closest, but elites can still kind of bully them, but it goes both ways. And like Void Dancer Troupe, I think is also in a really, really amazing spot. So like if there is an S tier, it's like Corsairs, Void Dancers, and like Phobos.
I could definitely see it just because like at the end of the day, it just like goes down to how well a team can deal with other teams, and movement in the game is very powerful. Just because it extends your threat range, and on top of that, having answers to many things. So, which Void Dancers have, and then Corsairs do as well. I actually don't know how well Corsairs have been doing in the tournament scene in general. I'm not sure if you know aware of that stat. I imagine they're very good now. Especially now that all the AP weapons are reduced.
They've had some moments of like big spikes in the win rate, but they've consistently never done like as amazingly as I would expect. Because to me, it feels maybe it's just all the amazing Corsairs. I've played against a lot of really good Corsairs players, and I'm like, Corsairs are scary. They feel like an S tier team. I mean, also a lot of that was playing as Phobos, and like I mentioned earlier, the power swords are a nightmare for Phobos.
Yeah,
but like they're so just killy and so fast, it's insane.
I think their only drawback is the feast or famine type of deal. Because in the previous edition, you needed the ability to get crits. I think that's still the same now because I think if they can give themselves punishing. I believe, which I think you still need a crit for that. So they still have no like reliable way to have rerolls.
They do have one ploy to have Relentless, so you just have to super duper capitalize on that, and then you can get balanced around markers. And like the novitiate's got what's that?
That's not as bad as I thought. So
yeah, so they're doing okay on rerolls. Like a lot of their problems were fixed, but then a lot of the like classic tricks that they had went away. But the new tricks that they have are just better. So they like Phobos was kind of similar. Like where like Phobos was pretty good, and they just got straight up buffed in a bunch of different ways. Like purity seals and rerolls is a huge buff, like in reliability. And like even without reliability like that, they were absolutely just slay machine turbo monsters. And now that it's like purity seals and rerolls that are really, really easy, like all of the similar ones, I mean like deadly shots for Phobos is just like if I haven't moved or if you're not in cover, and then like Kasserkin's abilities are like the opponent needs to be expended and not in cover, and it's like that's really, really bad compared to Phobos.
Yeah, they just like less restrictions, and width is that the one that gives you mortals when you hit them?
No. So that deadly shots is just it gives you balanced in basically all of your shooting all the time if you use it right, which is pretty easy. Nice. So then basically and then like you also get piercing weapons on your bolters. So then you have 5 attack, lethal 5 piercing bolt gun that can shoot 3 times per turn if you counteract, and you can omni scramble to trap people in their place. Between all of that, I think they're the killiest of all the Space Marines, and like not even by a little bit.
Yeah, their double shooting is actually very reliable, especially with the non-reciprocal marksman that just ignores obscuring. Is very scary and into the dark.
Yeah, it's absolutely savage. And And yeah, like their shooting profile is completely bananas. They have murderous entrance also. Insanity.
Yes. Actually, they have a better murderous entrance, I believe, because you can double strike with crits.
Yeah. Craziness. And then also, they're just like 5 attacks, lethal 5 balanced on everyone all the time.
And then their reavers are also very solid. It like costs more. They're within a certain range, I think, with terror. They like drop for free. They have like decent threat range.
Yeah, so they're actually like similar. In some situations, they're more mobile than Void Dancers.
Especially when
drop
they're
for
dropping.
Free is huge. Yeah, like if you're standing on the building that has the tall, it's like the smaller ruin that has the huge like triangle in the corner. You can just like jump over that and then drop for free and just like Batman jump off the roof and swoop down and just like slay somebody with a turbo knife. And then like, that's like there's no one in the game that can charge them back from there. I mean, I guess Void Dancers can climb, but then like the drop from that tall thing is like an extra 2-inch penalty because Void Dancers don't drop for free. So like Reavers can set up crazy non-reciprocal charges.
It's actually pretty scary. So I'd definitely be scared of Reavers for sure.
Yeah, pretty gnarly. And then they're also, I think, in my opinion, the Phobos have the best sniper in the game, which is actually a Reaver with a carbine, because your grab, shoot, and grapnel launcher means you can jump up onto a vantage. They're accurate 1 in the first place, so if you're shooting down from any vantage, it becomes accurate 2. You can give them the piercing rounds. Ooh, so now you're like 4 attacks, accurate 2, piercing, balanced. You can shoot twice, you can flip back to conceal, and then you can swoop off the objective later to still get things done.
They're the true Batmans.
Yeah, it's craziness.
And access to multiple smokes and stuns, which is really fun.
And also they can throw a stun grenade as a counteract, because they can counteract from conceal because they're elites. So it's just for the Astartes rule. So you just like stage aggressively, and then if someone rolls up on you with a counteract, you just chuck a stun at them.
Yeah, you might convince me to pick up I do have a box of infiltrators and incursors just because from the compendium I used to be able to buy a box and get 2 teams. So I have a couple, so I might make some Reavers. Try that out because they're pretty fun.
Yeah, that box doesn't have like the actual official parts for Reavers, but you can easily make at least 1 Reaver out of it, because there's a pose. I think they suggest you to build an infiltrator, but it's like a guy that has a 2-handed pistol pose. So if I was like starting from scratch right now and I just bought 1 box, I would build all of the specialists except for the Saboteur, because he sucks. I mean, you can noodle around and have fun with him, but like if you're trying to play seriously, don't even worry about him. And then so just be like 2 infiltrator warriors, 2 incursor warriors, all the specialists, and then make your sergeant ambiguous so he could be any sergeant. So just like give him extra, just douse him in knives and pistols and put like the weird looking scopes on him so you can't tell what gun he has. And then he could be the Reaver or infiltrator or incursor or whatever. And then there is 1 body that is a guy holding a pistol with 2 hands, and then just like don't give him a rifle, and then just strap knives on him, and now all of a sudden he's a Reaver.
Oh, that's a good hack. Yeah, I think if I have to pick up that 1 sergeant, that's like the leaping pose. It's just too cool.
Yeah, that's a super cool one. Yeah, so then if you do 1 extra model, now all of a sudden you have a clear cut. It's like a Primaris Reaver, like Lieutenant in Reaver armor or something is like the name of the model.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a cool one. And then just like 1 box plus that, then like, you know, you've got the 1 Reaver that you kit bash out of the other parts. And then like the Reaver might even come with 2 different helmet options, and if he does, then you just pop the other one on that pistol guy. Then he looks even more like a Reaver.
Way more affordable than the Void Dancers box, because you just, in reality, you could really just get 2 boxes and you'd be done. Or like you said, you could just like kit bash.
Yeah, so it's like, I mean, I generally wasn't even ever really taking more than 2 Reavers. Like I did it against novitiates, because like, but now novitiates are less of a problem, so you can probably get away with 2. And then like infiltrators are pretty important for the Omni Scramble. Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of cool stuff. I guess if I haven't ever mentioned this, I probably have. The Voxbreaker You stage him. There's always going to be one approach, which is your opponent's like biggest, easiest place to approach. If you cover that with your Omni Scramble bubble coming off the Vox Breaker, they can't ever activate first against you, and it's like more oppressive than Vox Scream by a lot.
Oh yeah. Also, isn't there an operative that you can give someone Seek Light?
Yeah. So he gives your incursors Seek Light, and then also he can Omni Scramble people he can't see, and he turns off their rerolls.
So I guess like against that matchup for Void Dancers, I'd say like you definitely want multiple. You just have to treat it as like a Vox Scream. You have to have multiple threat saturation, or else you can do like the Omni Scramble pin. They're never gonna get that charge off, and you'll get the Reaver. They'll come in and maybe charge fight shoot, which would be the worst possible thing that would happen to Void Dancers. Yeah, like you could probably easily get 2 kills off.
Yeah, that'll be a gnarly matchup for sure.
That, and I guess the mines, especially, are kind of dangerous as well, because we don't like the mines. You can throw down like a proximity mine, I think, and then it's really dangerous. We don't like that. We don't like any chip damage. We don't like yeah. Scary.
Yeah, like the mine guy, if you kill him, it'll just like drop the mine anyways. That's how mines work now. Huge.
Oh, is it? I never knew that. Interesting.
Yeah, so like now the description for all the mine layers is like the incursor mine layer is carrying your mine. He can set it down or whatever, and then the core rules are like when you're carrying something and you die, you set it down. So
that is very interesting. It's like in death mine.
Yes. So you've got like the ultimate dude to hold the door with the incursor mine layer on Into the Dark, where you'll just like run up and guard the door, and if they kill you, just drop the mine on the door anyways.
Yeah, then they're never gonna get through there because that's so much damage. I'm pretty sure. I'm not sure how much damage it does, but like stops you in your track and.
Yeah, I think it's like 2d3 plus 3, and then it immediately ends your action and activation, and next time you activate, you have -1 APL. It's ridiculous.
It just that's something like they're never going to that room, especially like you throw it down. It's very hard. Like, Predators don't have against elites. Maybe you could trade 1 or 2 models, but that's in their favor. Like, you really got to leverage that out activation ability, especially against Void Dancers to 6 Marine teams.
Man, I'm kind of talking myself back into going back to Phobos.
I mean, you did really well with them, if I recall, at Worlds.
Yeah, and I won my golden ticket with them in 3rd edition.
Yeah, and then I think they're going to be on the rise because they didn't get touched. All of the rough matchups got touched. So, and I guess not against the elves because the elves are just as rough. But we'll
Corsairs are the big spook. Yep. And of course, any final shout-outs before we head out?
Yes. So for the Canadian scene on the western side, we're having an event from June 28th to 29th, our 2-day event. We have a massive engraved axe and a couple of engraved weapons to give out with a bunch of fun prizes in Regina, Saskatchewan. A bit far out there, but we got our famous Regina style pizza. Some may say the torment of pizza. We could take a look. Just Google it. You'll either hate it or you'll love it. We're looking into a golden ticket. That'll be coming soon.
Sick.
And then shout out to all the Canadian Kill Team crowd. We're growing. We're showing up to events. So really proud. Saw the Vancouver peeps come into LVO. The Ontario peeps just as great as ever, and people from Quebec as well. Shout out to them.
Yeah, that's like every Canadian Kill Team player I've met has always been awesome people. Love you all.
Thank you.
Cool. Well, I should probably start editing this one because it's supposed to come out in like 20 minutes.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
But yeah, thanks again. Thanks again for coming on, and thanks again for recording the episode twice, like I said.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. And as always, thank you, listeners, for listening till the end.